With the recent tragedy in Bondi and Wakeley, it poses a confronting reality that may be difficult to cope with, especially for children. I feel for so many parents out there personally because I have no idea how to explain this kind of harrowing experience, and kids can be so cluey. So to help give parents and kids a way to deal with these devastating acts in the most appropriate way, we're joined by psychologist Dr. Sandy Ray. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Now, Sandy, we've said what we've had to say about how horrible this is. There's no words that can describe the tragedy. So how do we talk to our kids about the Bondi attacks?
So a lot of people are asking the very same question, very disturbed about how do we approach our children when the media is saturated with these sorts of events and images. And I think the very first thing is to check in with yourself as a parent. What are my feelings? Am I able to have a talk? Do I feel too sad or too distressed? And I think one of our obligations, the overarching obligations, first of all, as a parent, is to role model appropriate behaviour and not indulge in anxiety and safety awareness and hypervigilance. So we talk to children at different ages with different stages and different ages. We have different language. So, for under fives, we don't be seduced in thinking because they ask the questions that they need a detailed answer because they don't have the emotional repertoire.
Yeah.
So we really need to be very, very diligent about the sorts of words we use, the context we use them, and the most important message is really to understand that children need to know how safe they are in this world.
Absolutely. So what signs of emotional distress should we watch out for in our kids if we do see signs?
Well, I think one of the very first things as a message is talking about the difference between probable and possible. So we want to talk to children that it's possible that things happen, bad things happen, but it's not probable. So we want to make sure that they do feel safe. So then looking at their behaviour, there might be things like regressive behaviour, like bedwetting or nail biting, or it might be clingy or school refusal going to kinder. They're the sorts of behaviours that we need to be diligent about. But importantly, if they're under 10s, I think we really need to be careful about minimising the availability of the media to them. So, media saturation, we need to be careful that just because the TV's on and it comes on, you think that, they can listen to it, that's okay. But again, we know that these sorts of events can be really quite traumatic for young children to understand.
Yeah, so you talk about the TV being on the background, with news and stuff, but how about censoring them from media outlets such as iPads or iPhones, which we see so many kids with nowadays?
I think it's probably fair to say it's quite reasonable for under 10s. After 10, 11, 12, young teenagers, adolescents and young people, it becomes a bit more difficult. But of course, in their adolescence, it's okay to have these conversations about loss, about grief. And, all we can do there, I think, is just have these mature conversations about safety. We're safe in our family. We're safe in our community. And I think, another important example might be, just to normalise it, even though it's a very abnormal, very sad situation, is, we get into our car every day and every single day someone dies in a car accident.
Yeah.
So it's really important to give, adolescents perspective about how we do manage grief and loss and these sorts of events. And again, try and take the iPad or the phone off when it's bedtime. They don't take those devices to bed with them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Sandy, this advice is brilliant and obviously, aimed towards how we help and rationalise these things to our kids. But what about the adults out there that might be stressed out or feel confronted by these things? How do we help the adults?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because there's a lot of Facebook messages going around talking about, I feel too scared to let my kids out. I don't want to go down to the beach. I don't want to go to the supermarket, blah, blah, blah. Again, the first port of call I would say is you have an obligation to manage your own emotions and stop doing these social media posts. I think they're inappropriate, and what they do is they escalate a community anxiety, and we don't need that. So, first of all, I'd say to parents who are really feeling that, stop talking to other people about the hypervigilance, and bear in mind that people who are often, hyper-aroused because of these sorts of experiences may have other things that are going on in their life. It could be very triggering because they've had other traumas. So that's one thing to bear in mind. It's important to understand that sort of context. What's their mental health? Maybe experienced some sort of mental illness. Maybe they've previously just recently experienced loss. So we must be careful not to buy into some of these. Turn the TV off. Stop saturating your body with these messages. That's the very first advice I would give. If you feel that it's lingering, you can't shake it, then I'd say perhaps it might be time to go and see someone professionally, because I would imagine that it's comorbid or coexisting with some other trauma that this has triggered off.
Yeah.
Dr. Sandy Ray, we really hope our listeners find this message as informative as what we both have. We thank you so much for joining us this morning. Your insights have been invaluable, and we hope our discussion can offer that support. Remember, if you ever feel overwhelmed by the news, reaching out to your community can provide solace. You're not alone in this. If you need additional support, don't hesitate to contact resources like Lifeline at 13 11 14 or the Kids Helpline at 1-800-55 1800. Dr. Sandy Ray, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
My pleasure.